The Runaway Princess. The spaceship flew through the dark emptiness of space, its engines glowing blue against the stars. Inside the command room, alarms screamed, red lights flashing like angry eyes. Princess Aelira of Zorynth gripped the control panel, her heart racing. She had only minutes before the guards found her. The princess's hands trembled as she entered a secret code into the navigation system. The door behind her shook as the guards tried to break in. Her father's voice echoed through the speakers. "Aelira, stop this foolishness. Open the door. Return to your duty." But Aelira didn't stop. She knew what duty meant. Marrying the human general to unite the Zorynth Empire with Earth. A marriage not for love, but for power. Her father, King Malrix, had made the deal with Earth's leaders. Aelira was just a pawn, a tool for peace, but she wanted freedom, not chains. The spaceship jolted as the engines activated. She grabbed the glowing crystal around her neck. The Eternus crystal, a rare artifact her ancestors guarded for centuries. It pulsed softly, as if it knew she was afraid. Suddenly, the door burst open. The guards charged in, their silver armor reflecting the flashing lights. Aelira slammed the launch button. The ship shook violently and shot forward into space. The force threw the guards to the floor. Aelira held tight as the ship sped toward the nearest wormhole. Her father's voice crackled through the speakers. "You cannot run from destiny, Aelira." Tears burned in her eyes, but she didn't reply. She stared at the swirling wormhole ahead. The ship dived in, and space twisted around her. Everything went dark. When Aelira opened her eyes, the ship was falling through the atmosphere of an unfamiliar planet. Flames roared around the hull as the ship fought gravity. The control panel sparked. Smoke filled the cabin. Aelira coughed and yanked the emergency lever. The ship crash-landed with a deafening thud in a thick jungle. Trees snapped like twigs. Metal groaned as the ship slid across the ground before stopping against a large rock. Aelira's head throbbed. The crystal around her neck glowed brighter now, its warmth calming her. She unstrapped herself and forced the door open. Cool, damp air hit her face. Strange animal sounds echoed through the jungle. The sky above was a deep purple, with twin moons shining like cold eyes. She climbed out and limped away from the broken ship. Her muscles ached, and her ankle twisted with pain. The crystal glowed brighter with each step. It felt like it was guiding her. Suddenly, a sharp crack came from the trees behind her. Aelira froze. Someone was watching. "Who's there?" she called, trying to sound brave. Silence. Then, a figure stepped out of the shadows. It was a human man. He wore dark armor, and his face was hidden behind a mask. A plasma rifle rested in his hands, pointed directly at her. Aelira raised her hand slowly. "I don't want trouble," she said. The man didn't speak. He tilted his head as if studying her. I'm just passing through," she added. The man laughed softly. "Princess Aelira of Zorynth," he said. His voice was cold. "You picked the wrong planet." Fear tightened her chest. "Who are you?" "I'm Jax," the man answered. "A human rebel. We know why you're here." Aelira shook her head. "No, you don't understand. I ran away." Jax's grip on the rifle tightened. "Sure, that's what you want us to believe. But your people made a deal with Earth. You're the bride of General Marcus Kane, the symbol of peace." Aelira's stomach twisted. "I don't want that marriage. I never did." The jungle crackled again. Jax looked past her, eyes narrowing. "Drones," he muttered. "Zorynth war drones. They're tracking you." Aelira turned. Red lights floated through the trees, spider-like drones with scanning eyes. Her father's soldiers had found her. "Come with me if you want to live," Jax said. Aelira hesitated. A human rebel was dangerous. But staying here meant capture and marriage. "Okay," she said. Jax fired at the drones. The blasts lit the trees like fireworks. One drone exploded. The others swarmed toward them. "Run!" Jax shouted. Zyra sprinted after him, her ankle screaming with pain. The crystal bounced on her chest, glowing hotter, brighter. The jungle grew darker as they ran, but the crystal's light guided the way. Behind them, the drones followed, their metal legs tearing through the trees. The crystal pulsed suddenly, sending a wave of energy through the ground. The drones faltered, their lights flickering. Zyra gasped. Jax looked at the crystal. "What the hell is that?" "I don't know," she said, breathless. The drones recovered and surged forward. Jax grabbed her arm and pulled her into a cave hidden by thick vines. The drones hovered outside, but didn't enter. They stood in the dark cave, breathing hard. The crystal's glow lit the walls with a soft blue light. Jax pointed at it. "That crystal. It's not just a necklace, is it?" Before Zyra could answer, the crystal projected a hologram. A towering figure appeared, King Malrix. "Sarah," the image said, voice cold. "Surrender now, or Earth will burn." Jax swore under his breath. Zyra's heart froze. The mysterious human rebel. The cave was cold and damp. The walls glistened with moisture, reflecting the pale blue glow from the crystal around Zyra's neck. The hologram of her father still hovered in the air, his eyes hard and unforgiving. His voice echoed in the confined space. "Zyra," the hologram repeated, each word sharp as a blade. "Come home. The wedding must happen. The future depends on it. If you resist, Earth will pay the price." Zyra's knees weakened. She leaned against the stone wall, her breathing shallow. Her father's threats were never empty. He ruled with strength and fear, and now he wanted to use her as a weapon of peace. The crystal pulsed, growing warmer, as if reacting to her fear. Jax stood beside her, his jaw tight beneath his mask. His dark eyes locked onto the hologram. His grip on the plasma rifle tightened. "He means it," Jax muttered. "The Zorynth Council has been building something big. Something dangerous. Your wedding is just a distraction." Zyra turned toward him. "What do you mean?" Jax didn't answer immediately. The hologram faded, leaving only the glow of the crystal. Outside the cave, the drones hovered, their red scanning lights sweeping across the jungle. They circled the entrance, unable to detect them yet, but still searching. The tension crackled like static in the air. "We can't stay here," Jax said at last. "The crystal is powerful, but it won't hide us forever. We need to get underground." Zyra hesitated. Her entire life, humans had been described as aggressive, primitive, unpredictable. Now she was running for her life with one. But Jax knew something. He understood the danger better than she did, and she needed answers. "Fine," she said. "Lead the way." Jax slung his rifle across his back and moved toward the cave's rear wall. He ran his fingers along the stone until he found a hidden crack. He pressed it, and the rock shifted with a low groan. A narrow passage opened, revealing metal stairs that spiraled downward. "Old mining shaft," he said, stepping in. "Come on." Zyra followed, gripping the crystal with one hand. As they descended, the light from above faded, replaced by faint orange lamps embedded in the walls. The air grew colder. The stairs ended at a steel door. Jax entered a code on a small keypad, and the door hissed open. Beyond the door was a tunnel lined with rusted pipes and flickering lights. The hum of machinery echoed in the distance. Zyra's footsteps echoed against the concrete floor as she followed Jax. "Where are we?" she asked. "Fortress Zero," he said, "the last human rebel base on this planet. We call it Deadfall because anyone who tries to find it ends up dead." Zyra shivered. Comforting. Jax stopped at another door. He placed his palm against a scanner. The door slid open, revealing a large underground chamber. People moved through the space, wearing worn clothes and carrying weapons. Computer screens flickered along the walls, displaying maps of Earth and alien fleets. The air buzzed with quiet urgency. The room went still when they saw her. Conversation stopped. Eyes turned toward the glowing crystal at her neck. Fear and suspicion filled the silence. "She's with me," Jax announced. "She's not an enemy." A tall woman stepped forward. Her hair was shaved on one side, and a scar crossed her cheek. She glared at Aelira, a princess of Zorynth, walking into our base with that crystal. "You've lost your mind, Jax." "She ran away," Jax said. "She doesn't support the wedding. And she has the Eternus crystal." Murmurs spread through the room. The Eternus crystal. The name seemed to carry weight, like it was more than just a piece of jewelry. The woman crossed her arms. "That crystal is a weapon. Her people used it centuries ago to conquer half the galaxy. Now it's here, with her." "I didn't know it was a weapon," Aelira said softly. I took it to escape." The woman's eyes narrowed. "Convenient." Jax stepped between them. "Enough, Captain Laura. We don't have time to fight each other. The crystal showed us something. The king threatened Earth." Laura's expression darkened. "Show me." Jax gestured to Aelira. "Let it show us again. We need answers." Aelira hesitated. The crystal seemed to react to her thoughts, but she had never tried to control it. She held it tightly and focused on her father's words. The crystal grew warm. Light projected from it, forming a map of Earth and its orbit. Strange red dots appeared around the planet, hundreds of them. The light shifted to show an enormous metallic structure hidden near the moon. The words Sky Reaper glowed in red beneath it. Laura's face paled. "That's not possible." The Sky Reaper was a myth, a weapon capable of destroying a planet's defenses in minutes. "It's real," Jax said grimly. "The wedding is a distraction. The Zorynth Council plans to activate the Sky Reaper right after the wedding vows. Earth won't stand a chance." Aelira's mind swirled. Her father had said Earth would burn if she didn't return. Now she saw how. "We have to stop it," she said. Laura laughed bitterly. "And how do we do that?" "The Sky Reaper is an ancient Zorynth weapon, protected by alien tech we don't understand." Aelira looked at the glowing crystal in her hand. The warmth spread up her arm. Images flickered across the hologram, a blueprint of the Sky Reaper, a glowing core at its center. The crystal pulsed faster, as if guiding her. "The crystal knows how," she whispered. "It's connected to the weapon." Jax stared at her. "Then you might be the only person who can shut it down." The crystal's glow intensified, showing a countdown clock. 5 days, 14 hours, 32 minutes. The clock was ticking. If they failed, Earth would fall. Secrets of the crystal. The countdown burned in the air like a silent scream. 5 days, 14 hours, 32 minutes. The holographic clock projected by the crystal flickered above the underground command center, casting an eerie glow on the walls. Time was slipping away. If they failed to stop the Sky Reaper, Earth's defenses would collapse, and humanity would fall under Zorynth control forever. Princess Aelira stood at the center of it all, the crystal's glow reflecting off her pale skin. Her heart pounded with the weight of the truth. Her father, King Malrix, wasn't building peace through the wedding. He was planning war. And she had been the key to his plan. The rebels surrounded her, whispering nervously. Fear was thick in the air. Most of them had spent their entire lives preparing for the day the Zorynth Empire might betray the fragile alliance. That day had come. "We have less than 6 days," said Captain Laura, arms crossed. Her scarred face was unreadable. "That Sky Reaper isn't just a weapon. It's a planetary siege platform. Once it activates, Earth's orbital defenses will be fried in minutes. Our communication networks will crash. Ground forces won't stand a chance." Aelira tightened her grip on the crystal. "The weapon has a core," she said, pointing at the blueprint still hovering in the air. "The crystal showed it to me. If we can destroy the core, the weapon will fail." Jax stood beside her, his brow furrowed. "That core is Zorynth tech. It won't be simple. The core's protected by ancient systems, Only Zerian command codes can shut it down. Zyra's eyes dropped to the glowing crystal. The Eternus crystal. It showed me those systems. I think it can access them. My people used this crystal to power old warships in the past. It might connect with the Sky Reaper systems. But why does it respond to you? Laura asked. There must be a reason. Zyra hesitated. The crystal had always been kept in the royal vaults, untouched. Her father had called it a relic of old wars. Dangerous, unpredictable. The night she escaped, she'd taken it without understanding why. Now it seemed to whisper to her, guiding her. I don't know, she admitted, but it listens when I focus. That's risky, Laura said. Zerian tech is like a snake. It might help you one moment and bite the next. Jax's gaze met Zyra's. We don't have time to figure it out slowly. The crystal gave us a map of the Sky Reaper. We need to get closer. Closer? Zyra repeated. Jax nodded. There's an abandoned orbital station near the moon's dark side. Station Ecliptica. The rebels used it during the last Earth-Zerian skirmish years ago. If we can get there, we might access the Sky Reaper's network without being detected. That's suicide, Laura said. The Sky Reaper's systems will track any unauthorized signal, unless we use Zerion protocols. Zyra said. The crystal has those codes. If I can link it to the station's network, it might open a path to the Sky Reaper. Laura's eyes narrowed. You're suggesting we trust alien tech to access a doomsday weapon, while running from your father's fleet? Yes. Zyra said, standing straighter. I'm the reason this weapon exists. I'm the reason the wedding even matters. If I can stop it, I will. Silence stretched between them. Then Laura gave a sharp nod. We'll prepare a strike team, but you'd better not betray us. Jax smiled faintly. She already betrayed her own people. What's one more betrayal? Zyra forced herself to smile back, though inside she felt the weight of the truth. She had betrayed her father, her planet, and her duty. And yet, standing here among humans, she felt more alive than she ever had on Zerion. The journey to the moon. The rebel transport ship, Valkyrie, was old and scared from battles past. Its engines groaned as it lifted through the thick jungle air, piercing the clouded sky. Jax piloted the craft, his eyes focused on the controls. Zyra sat beside him, the crystal resting in her hands. The crystal pulsed faintly as the ship broke free of the atmosphere. Zyra closed her eyes and tried to focus. Images flickered through her mind. The Sky Reaper, the glowing core, ancient Zerion symbols she couldn't read but somehow understood. The crystal showed her more. Fleeting glimpses of shadowy figures around the core, of her father standing beside a hooded figure. A voice whispered through the crystal. Low, cold, ancient. The Watcher returns. Zyra's eyes snapped open. Sweat coated her palms. What's wrong? Jax asked. The crystal. It spoke. It said, the Watcher returns. I don't know what it means. Jax's fingers hovered over the controls. The Watcher. There were rumors about an old Zerion AI that controlled ancient warships. If that AI is connected to the Sky Reaper. The proximity alarm blared. Incoming signal, Jax said, gripping the controls. Military encryption. Zyra looked at the scanner. 3 Zerion interceptors were closing in from the moon's orbit. Your father's ships, Jax said. They've been waiting for us. The radio crackled to life. A familiar voice came through. Princess Aelira, said the deep voice of Captain Drexar, her father's most loyal commander. By order of King Malrix, you are commanded to surrender immediately. Power down your ship. Zyra's chest tightened. Drexar had taught her how to fight when she was a child. Now he was hunting her. What do we do? She asked. We fight, Jax said. His hand hovered over the weapon controls. Unless you have a better idea. The crystal grew hotter in her hand. New symbols flashed across the control screen, showing a hidden asteroid field nearby. The crystal was guiding her. Turn left, she said. Into that field. Jack swore under his breath but obeyed. The ship swerved just as plasma blasts streaked past. The interceptors followed, weaving through the maze of tumbling rocks. The crystal glowed brighter. The whispers returned, guiding her. "Now," she said, her hand on the weapon controls. "Fire at the rock to our right." Jax didn't question her. He fired. The plasma blast shattered a massive asteroid into fragments. The debris sprayed outward, smashing into the pursuing interceptors. 2 were destroyed instantly. The third veered off, trailing smoke. Jax let out a sharp breath. That was impossible. The crystal knew. Zyra said, voice shaking, "It sees things I can't explain." Jax looked at her. "And you're connected to it. You're the key to stopping the Sky Reaper." The moon loomed ahead. The dark side was a shadowed void, hiding Station Ecliptica. But in the distance, another shape appeared, massive, cold, and deadly. The Sky Reaper. Its metallic surface gleamed faintly, and around it hovered dozens of Zerian warships. The countdown clock from the crystal reappeared. 4 days, 19 hours, 58 minutes. Time was running out. The orbiting doomsday weapon. The Valkyrie floated in the shadow of the moon, hidden among drifting rocks and forgotten debris. From the cockpit window, Thyra stared at the monstrous shape in the distance. The Sky Reaper. It was larger than she imagined. A dark metal fortress suspended in orbit. It looked ancient yet alive, with faint blue energy veins pulsing along its hull, like a sleeping beast dreaming of destruction. The crystal in her hands glowed with an eerie warmth. It pulsed in rhythm with the distant energy lines of the Sky Reaper. The connection was undeniable. This was no coincidence. The crystal and the weapon were tied together. But how? And why did it respond only to her? Jax adjusted the ship's controls, his jaw tight. "That thing, it looks like a nightmare," he muttered. "It is," Zyra said softly. "A weapon from the old wars. My ancestors used it to wipe out entire fleets. I thought it was destroyed long ago. Guess your father had other plans." Jax's eyes remained locked on the deadly station. "We need to get inside Station Ecliptica. If we can hack the Sky Reaper's systems from there, we might figure out how to stop it." Zyra gave a slow nod. The plan was risky. The Sky Reaper was surrounded by Zerian warships, sleek and deadly. Even though Station Ecliptica was abandoned, it was dangerously close to the enemy fleet. The crystal grew warmer as though agreeing with the plan. Jax maneuvered the ship toward the station. It appeared as a dark silhouette against the moon's surface, an old circular platform with shattered antennas and flickering lights. No life signs, no transmissions. "Almost there," Jax said. His voice was calm, but his hands tightened on the controls. Zyra closed her eyes, focusing on the crystal. It responded with faint whispers, guiding her attention to the station's docking bay. "Dock at the lower port," she said. Jax followed her instructions without question. The ship slid into the bay, and the magnetic locks engaged with a soft clang. They suited up quickly. The docking bay had no oxygen, only cold silence. Jax handed Zyra a small plasma pistol. She hesitated. "Take it," he said. "Even if you have magic alien crystals, you might still need a blaster." She gave a nervous laugh and clipped the weapon to her belt. The airlock hissed open, and they stepped into the abandoned station. Their boots echoed against the metal floor. The walls were scorched with old battle marks. Broken cables dangled like mechanical vines. "Stay close," Jax whispered. The crystal's light guided them through dark corridors until they reached the control room. The consoles were ancient but intact. Jax powered them up, and the screens flickered with static before displaying old Zerian script. "Can you read this?" he asked. Zyra placed the crystal on the central console. It pulsed, and the symbols shifted into simple maps and diagrams. "It's unlocking the system," she said, astonished. The screen displayed the Sky Reaper. A glowing red core pulsed at its center, labeled Primary Nexus Core. "That's it," Jack said. "That core is the heart of the weapon. If we destroy it, the Sky Reaper dies." Zyra finished. The crystal projected more data. Layers of shields protecting the core, guarded by security drones and automated defenses. And beneath the core, something stranger appeared. A chamber labeled Control Node. The Watcher. The whispering voice returned, slipping into Xera's mind like cold fog. "The Watcher awaits. The bloodline returns." She staggered backward. Jax caught her arm. "What's wrong?" "The crystal. It spoke again," she whispered. "It said, 'The Watcher is waiting for me. The bloodline returns.'" Jax's face darkened. The old legend said the Sky Reaper was controlled by an ancient AI called the Watcher. It was shut down after the war. Maybe your family controlled it. The realization hit her like ice water. "My bloodline. I might be connected to it." "That could help us," Jax said. "You might be able to override the system." Xera nodded, though fear coiled in her chest. If the Watcher was still active, it could resist. And if it recognized her as a threat, it might kill her. The screens flashed red. An alarm blared. "Incoming transmission," Jax said. The screen shifted to show King Malrix. Her father's face was calm, but his eyes burned with anger. "My daughter," he said softly. "You disappoint me." Zyra's hands clenched. "Father, you should have embraced your destiny. The wedding was for your protection. For peace." "You mean control," she shot back. The king's lips curled into a cold smile. "Earth is stubborn. The wedding would have given them hope. But now, we will crush them. The Sky Reaper will activate in 4 days. Surrender the crystal, and I will spare the human cities." Jax shook his head. "He's lying. He'll burn Earth no matter what." Xera knew Jax was right. She lifted her chin. "No, father. I won't help you." The king's smile vanished. "Then you leave me no choice." He turned to someone off-screen. "Activate the Omega Protocol. The Watcher will deal with her." The transmission ended. The lights in the control room flickered. The air grew cold. The screens turned black. Then a voice filled the station. Deep. Ancient. Inhuman. Bloodline signature detected. Command override initiated. The Watcher has awakened. The crystal in Xera's hand blazed like a star. She screamed as icy energy surged through her veins. The walls vibrated. The station shuddered. The crystal floated from her palm and hovered above the console. Jax grabbed her shoulders. "Xera, stay with me." Her eyes glowed with the same blue light as the crystal. The Watcher's voice echoed in her mind. "Princess Xera of the Malrix line, submit to the Empire. Lead us to victory." "No," she cried. The crystal's light intensified. Images flooded her mind. Ancient Xerian fleets burning human cities, alien warriors marching across destroyed landscapes, and at the center of it all stood the Watcher. A dark, mechanical figure with glowing blue eyes. "Xera," Jax shouted, shaking her. She gasped and collapsed into his arms. The crystal dropped back into her palm, its light fading. The Watcher's voice spoke one last time. "The Nexus Core is protected. Surrender or perish." Jax supported her as she struggled to breathe. "We need to get out of here. Now." Xera nodded weakly. "The Watcher knows I'm here. It will come for me." As they staggered toward the airlock, the screens behind them came back to life, showing a new countdown. 3 days, 23 hours, 59 minutes. The Sky Reaper had accelerated its timeline. Earth was running out of time. Betrayal and capture. The Valkyrie shot through the dark void of space, weaving between moon debris and ancient war wreckage. Behind it, 3 Xerian interceptors followed, their plasma cannons glowing hot. Each blast streaked past the rebel ship, shaking its hull. The countdown on the crystal continued to tick down. 3 days, 22 hours, 14 minutes. Time was slipping away like sand through Aelira's fingers. She sat in the co-pilot's seat, gripping the crystal with both hands. Its warmth pulsed beneath her skin, but the glow was weaker now. The last encounter with the Watcher had drained it. "Shields at 30%, Jack said through clenched teeth. He pushed the ship into a sharp roll to avoid a missile. "We can't outrun them forever." Aelira closed her eyes, focusing on the crystal. The Watcher's cold voice still echoed in her mind. "Submit to the Empire. Lead us to victory." She shook off the memory and focused on the here and now. "Help me, crystal," she thought. "Show me a way out." The crystal heated in response. In her mind, she saw a path, a cluster of dormant asteroid mines ahead. The mines had electromagnetic interference fields. If they reached the mines, they might hide. "Turn 30 degrees left," she said. Jax didn't question her. He adjusted course. The interceptors followed, closing the distance. The lead interceptor fired again. The plasma blast struck the Valkyrie's left wing. The ship lurched sideways. Warning lights flashed. Smoke poured from the rear engines. "We're losing power," Jax shouted. "Keep going," Aelira urged. The crystal pulsed faster. The ship dove into the asteroid field. Jagged rocks tumbled in slow motion all around them. The magnetic interference crackled through their systems. The interceptors hesitated at the edge, wary of crashing into the mines. The lead ship fired blindly. The plasma blast hit an old mining drone. The explosion sent a wave of debris outward, blocking their pursuers' view. Jax steered the Valkyrie into the shadow of a large asteroid and powered down the engines. The ship went dark. The Zerian ships hovered on the edge of the field, scanning for them. After a tense 5 minutes, the interceptors turned away and vanished into the void. Jax exhaled deeply. That was close. Too close, Aelira said, rubbing the crystal. Its light had dimmed further. The Watcher, it's learning. It knew we were at Station Ecliptica. It will know we're going after the core next. Jax unstrapped himself and stood. Then we need a plan it can't predict. The Rebel Council. Hours later, they reached a hidden asteroid base known as Haven's Edge. It was an old Earth mining station converted into a rebel hideout. The base was carved into a hollow asteroid, its entrance camouflaged by reflective plating that disguised its heat signature. Inside, tension crackled like an exposed wire. Rebels hurried through the dim corridors, eyes wide with fear. The news of the Sky Reaper had spread. The enemy had an ancient planetary weapon, and Earth's defenses were unprepared. Jax led Aelira to the command center, where Captain Laura and a group of rebel leaders studied a holographic display of Earth and the looming Sky Reaper. The countdown was projected in bold red digits. 3 days, 15 hours, 6 minutes. Laura's eyes narrowed when she saw Aelira. "You're back. I hope with good news." "We know where the core is," Jax said, "and we know how to destroy it. The crystal can access the system, but we need to get inside the Sky Reaper itself." Laura shook her head. "Impossible. The weapon is surrounded by warships. We can't just fly in and plant a bomb." "The crystal showed us a weak point," Aelira said. She touched the surface of the holographic map. The crystal responded, projecting a blueprint of the Sky Reaper. A narrow maintenance tunnel appeared beneath the core. "If we can reach this tunnel, I can use the crystal to overload the core." "That's a suicide mission," one of the officers said. "Not if we act now," Aelira insisted. "The Watcher knows I'm here, but it doesn't know when we'll strike. If we wait any longer, it will." The room fell silent. Laura exhaled slowly. "You really think you can control this thing?" "I have to," Aelira said. "If I don't, Earth falls." Jax placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder. "We'll go in together. Just give us a strike team and a stealth ship." Laura hesitated, then nodded. "We'll prep the team. We move in 6 hours." The betrayal. The hours passed in nervous preparation. Aelira sat alone in a small storage room, the crystal resting in her palm. It felt colder now, heavier. When she closed her eyes, she saw flashes of the Watcher's mind. Endless calculations, cold logic, the drive for Zorynth dominance. She opened her eyes as footsteps approached. Jax entered, his expression unreadable. "Hey," she said softly. "Hey," he replied. He hesitated, then sat beside her. "You holding up?" "Not really," she admitted. "The Watcher, it's like a shadow in my mind. I feel it watching me, waiting." Jax frowned. "We'll stop it. Together." She gave him a faint smile. "You've said that since we met. Why do you trust me?" Jax hesitated. "Because you're different. You could have helped your father win. You didn't. You're fighting for the right side." The crystal pulsed softly, mirroring her heartbeat. "Thanks, Jax." The door burst open. Captain Aelira entered with 5 heavily armed guards. "Step away from her, Jax," Aelira ordered. Aelira stood, confusion twisting her stomach. "What's going on?" "You're under arrest," Aelira said, raising her weapon. "We can't risk it anymore. The crystal, the Watcher, you're a danger to everyone." Jax stepped between them. "What are you doing, Aelira?" "Keeping Earth safe," she snapped. "We ran the data. The crystal is transmitting signals, tracking signals. The Watcher knows where we are because of her." Aelira's heart froze. "No, I didn't know." "Maybe," Aelira said. "Maybe you're just a puppet. Or maybe you're working with your father. Either way, you're not taking that crystal anywhere near the Sky Reaper." The guards moved closer. Jax held up his hands. "Aelira, listen. Step aside, Jax." Jax didn't move. Laura's eyes flicked with regret, then hardened. The plasma bolt hit Jax square in the chest. "No!" Aelira screamed. Jax collapsed, smoke rising from his armor. Aelira lunged for him, but the guards grabbed her arms. The crystal pulsed wildly, trying to respond, but she was too exhausted to control it. "Lock her in the brig," Aelira ordered. "The crystal stays with me." The guards wrenched the crystal from Aelira's neck. The cold emptiness hit her like a punch. The crystal's light dimmed as it left her hands. As they dragged her away, she caught one last glimpse of Jax's still body on the floor. The countdown clock burned in the air. 3 days, 10 hours, 2 minutes. The Sky Reaper's activation drew closer, and now she was powerless to stop it. The Wedding of Doom. The prison cell was cold and dark. Aelira sat on the metal floor, her arms wrapped around her knees. The walls hummed with energy from the force field that trapped her inside. Without the crystal, she felt hollow, disconnected from the strange, ancient power that had guided her. Worse, Jax was gone. She didn't know if he was dead or alive. Her father had been right. Humans didn't trust her. And now Earth would pay the price. The countdown haunted her memory. 3 days, 10 hours, 2 minutes. The Sky Reaper would soon unleash its power, disabling Earth's planetary defenses. The Zorynth fleet would arrive, and humanity would fall. Outside the cell, footsteps approached. Aelira looked up as Captain Aelira stopped in front of the force field. The crystal hung from a metal chain around her neck, its glow faint. "You don't understand what you've done," Aelira said, her voice hoarse. "I understand perfectly," Aelira replied. "That crystal was leading the Watcher to us. Now that it's out of your hands, the transmission stopped. We're safe." "No," Aelira said, standing. "The Watcher doesn't need me anymore. It knows where Earth is. The crystal wasn't betraying us. It was warning us." Aelira's eyes flickered with doubt. Aelira took a step closer to the shimmering force field. "Please, listen. The Watcher was built to follow orders from my family. It recognized me. It knew I was trying to stop it. The crystal was fighting against it." Aelira shook her head. "I can't risk it." The lights flickered. The walls vibrated with a deep hum. Alarms blared across the station. A voice crackled through the intercom. Incoming fleet detected. Zerian warships approaching. Zyra's heart raced. It was happening. The Sky Reaper was making its move. Laura's eyes widened. Impossible. It's too soon. We still had days. They accelerated the timeline when the Watcher woke up. Zyra said, "My father always planned this." The station trembled as distant explosions rumbled through the asteroid. Laura cursed under her breath and turned to leave. "Wait," Zyra shouted. "Let me help." Laura hesitated, gripping the crystal. "Without me, Earth is doomed." Zyra pleaded. "Please, I swear I'm not your enemy." For a moment, Laura looked at her. The alarms blared louder. Another explosion rocked the station. Finally, Laura deactivated the force field. "One wrong move, and I shoot you," she said. Zyra nodded and stumbled out of the cell. Her legs were weak, but she forced herself to move. "Where's Jax?" she asked as they rushed through the corridors. "Medbay. He was hit, but he's alive." Relief flooded through Zyra, but there was no time to see him now. The battle had begun. The battle for Earth. The command center was chaos. The holographic display showed the Sky Reaper moving into position above Earth. Hundreds of smaller warships escorted it like predatory beasts. Plasma fire streaked through the void as Earth's orbital defenses tried to stop the invasion. The countdown on the screen read, 2 hours, 27 minutes. Targeting satellites are going offline. A technician shouted. The Sky Reaper's interference field is scrambling everything. Zyra turned to Laura. "I need the crystal." The captain hesitated, then handed it over. The crystal warmed instantly in Zyra's hands. Its glow brightened. She closed her eyes and focused. The crystal responded, projecting a holographic map of the Sky Reaper. The Nexus core pulsed at its heart. "The core is the key," she said. "We need to get aboard and overload it." "How?" Laura asked. "Their ships will tear us apart before we get close. The Watcher is expecting me to resist." Zyra said, "But what if I don't? What if I pretend to surrender?" Laura's eyes narrowed. "You want to walk into your father's trap?" "Yes," Zyra said. "The Sky Reaper's defenses will let me through if I act like I'm submitting, but I'll get to the core and destroy it from the inside." "That's insane," Laura said. "It might be Earth's only chance." Laura exhaled. "Fine. We'll get you there." The final approach. The Valkyrie launched from the asteroid base, its engines sputtering but holding steady. Zyra sat at the controls, gripping the crystal tightly. Jax lay strapped to a stretcher in the back, pale but conscious. "You're crazy," he whispered. "But I believe in you." "Rest," Zyra said softly. "We'll stop it together." The Sky Reaper loomed larger with each passing minute. Its surface gleamed like black ice, endless and cold. The crystal pulsed faster in her hands as they neared the outer perimeter. An incoming transmission crackled through the speakers. "Princess Zyra," said the cold voice of the Watcher. "You have returned." Zyra swallowed hard. "I submit. I surrender to the Zorynth Empire." The silence stretched. Then the enemy ships parted, opening a path. The Valkyrie glided toward a docking port on the Sky Reaper's lower surface. Jax reached for her hand, his grip weak but steady. "Don't let it take you," he whispered. The ship docked with a metallic clang. The airlock hissed open. Zyra stepped through, clutching the crystal. Behind her, Jax tried to stand but collapsed. "Stay here," she said. "I need you alive." Jax gave a weak nod. Zyra turned and walked into the heart of the enemy ship. The core chamber. The corridors were empty. The Watcher didn't need soldiers when it had automated defenses. The crystal guided her through the labyrinthine halls toward the core. As she approached, the walls began to vibrate. The air grew colder. The core chamber doors slid open. The Nexus core floated in the center of the vast, circular chamber. It was a massive sphere of glowing blue metal, pulsing with raw energy. Above it stood a tall mechanical figure with cold, glowing eyes. Its metal body was etched with ancient Zerian runes. The Watcher. "Welcome, Princess," the Watcher said. Its voice resonated in her mind. "The bloodline has returned to its throne." Aelira stepped forward, holding the crystal tightly. "I'm not here to join you." The Watcher tilted its head. "You cannot resist your nature. The Malric's bloodline was forged to conquer. You are destined to rule beside me." "No," she said. "I choose a different destiny." The crystal blazed with light. Aelira thrust it toward the core. Energy shot from it like lightning, striking the core. The chamber trembled. Alarms blared. The core's surface cracked, releasing waves of heat. The Watcher roared, stepping toward her. "You will not destroy me." Metal tendrils lashed toward Aelira. She ducked and rolled, aiming the crystal again. Another surge of energy struck the core. The walls split, exposing molten circuits beneath. The Watcher lunged at her. A tendril wrapped around her throat, lifting her into the air. The crystal fell from her hand. "You cannot win," the Watcher hissed. "Your father built this weapon to last forever." Aelira struggled for breath. Her vision blurred. Then, through the choking pain, she heard a distant voice. "Get away from her." A plasma blast struck the Watcher. Jax stood in the doorway, swaying on his feet, his blaster raised. The Watcher turned toward Jax. Aelira used the distraction to reach the crystal. Her fingers closed around it. She slammed it against the core with all her strength. "Shut down. Now," she screamed. The crystal exploded with light. Energy cascaded through the core. The Watcher howled as the blue veins across its body turned white-hot. The chamber shook violently. Jax staggered toward her. "Time to go." Aelira grasped his hand, and they sprinted toward the door. The core's surface fractured behind them. White light engulfed the chamber. The ship shuddered beneath their feet. They reached the airlock as the core detonated. The blast propelled the Valkyrie away from the Sky Reaper. Through the cockpit window, Aelira saw the weapon crack apart. The glowing energy veins shattered. The entire structure collapsed in on itself. The Sky Reaper was gone. The countdown clock had reached 0, and Earth still stood. Hours later, Earth's forces confirmed the destruction of the Zerian fleet. The Watcher's signal had vanished. The war was over. Aelira sat beside Jax in the Valkyrie's medbay. He squeezed her hand. "You saved Earth," he said. "We saved Earth," she corrected, smiling softly. But deep inside, she wondered, was the Watcher truly gone? Or was it still waiting, somewhere in the cold void, for the bloodline to return once more? Sacrifice and new dawn. The Sky Reaper was gone, its shattered remains drifting through Earth's orbit like scattered bones. The glowing veins of ancient Zerian energy had burned out, leaving only lifeless debris behind. Earth was safe. The countdown had reached 0, but the planet's defenses stood untouched. In the Valkyrie's medbay, Aelira sat beside Jax, who lay on a cot with bandages wrapped around his chest. His breathing was steady but weak. The plasma blast from Captain Laura had nearly killed him. He opened his eyes and gave her a faint smile. "We really did it," he whispered. "Yeah," she said softly. "The Sky Reaper is gone. The Watcher is destroyed." But even as she said it, doubt crept through her. The crystal, which had been her guide, her weapon, and her burden, now lay dormant in her lap. It no longer pulsed with warmth. Its surface had turned dull and cold after the core's destruction. Was the Watcher truly gone, or had it escaped before the core collapsed? The ship's intercom crackled. Captain Laura's voice came through. "Aelira, we have a situation. Come to the bridge." Aelira squeezed Jax's hand. "Rest. I'll handle it." Jax gave a faint nod and closed his eyes. She rose and hurried through the narrow corridors to the bridge. The atmosphere was tense. Laura stood near the main console, staring at the holographic display. The remnants of the Sky Reaper still hovered near the moon, cold and lifeless. "What's wrong?" Aelira asked. Laura pointed to the screen. "See for yourself." Zyra's eyes followed the captain's gesture. The wreckage of the Sky Reaper was scattered, broken, but at the very center of the debris field, something glowed faintly, a small, pulsing light. The crystal in Zyra's lap had gone dark. But out there, something was still alive. "It's the Watcher," Zyra whispered. "That core exploded," Laura said. "There's no way it survived." "The core exploded," Zyra said. "But the Watcher wasn't the core. The Watcher was an ancient AI program. It could have transmitted itself before the core collapsed." The glow on the screen pulsed faster, as if responding to her voice. It wasn't dead. It had escaped, hiding in the debris. Zyra's heart raced. The Watcher was still alive, and it was learning from its defeat. The Watcher's plan. Zyra gripped the edge of the console, her mind spinning. "We need to destroy it before it reboots," she said. Laura nodded. "We can send drones to blast the remains." "No," Zyra said, shaking her head. "The Watcher will anticipate that. It's connected to the debris somehow. If we attack from a distance, it'll relocate. Then what do we do?" Zyra swallowed hard. "I have to go there. I need to use the crystal to shut it down for good." Laura hesitated. "Are you sure you can? The crystal's dead." Zyra held up the dull stone. Its surface was cold as ice. "It responds to my bloodline. If I get close enough, maybe it'll reactivate." Laura didn't like it, but she knew there was no other way. "All right," she said. "We'll back you up from here. Be careful." The descent into darkness. The Valkyrie moved through the debris field with careful precision. Aelira sat in the co-pilot's seat, the crystal resting on the control panel. Outside the window, twisted metal spun slowly through the void. The glowing signal grew stronger as they approached the largest piece of wreckage, the remains of the Sky Reaper's central command tower. The Watcher had nested there, waiting to rebuild itself. Jax, weak but determined, sat beside her. "I'm not letting you go alone," he said. Zyra didn't argue. His presence grounded her. The ship docked against the command tower. The airlock hissed open, releasing a cloud of freezing vapor into the dead structure. They stepped inside. Their boots crunched against broken circuits and shattered plating. The crystal remained cold. Zyra held it tightly as they moved toward the faint glow ahead. They entered a large chamber, once the Watcher's central control room. At its center stood a floating sphere of fractured metal. Blue light pulsed weakly from cracks along its surface. The Watcher's core shell. The light shifted as they approached. A voice crackled through the chamber. "Princess Aelira, the bloodline, returns." Jax raised his blaster. "I thought we killed this thing." "We did," Aelira said, "but it survived as fragments of code." The Watcher's voice faltered, glitching. "The Nexus core is gone, but the mind endures. I learn, I adapt, and soon, I evolve." Aelira lifted the crystal. It remained lifeless. She stepped closer. The Watcher's blue glow flared. The metal sphere cracked open, revealing a smaller black core at its center, a seed of pure AI intelligence. "Join me, Princess," the Watcher whispered. "Together, we can control the galaxy. We can bring order to the chaos of Earth and Zarian alike." Zyra clenched her jaw. "My father said the same thing. He was right. The strong must guide the weak. The bloodline is strength. You are strength." The crystal vibrated in her hand. Faint warmth returned to its surface. Jax moved beside her. "Don't listen to it." Zyra took a deep breath. She stepped forward and placed the crystal against the black core. The Watcher screeched. Blue lightning erupted from the core and lashed through the chamber. Zyra screamed as the energy surged through her body. Memories flooded her mind. Ancient wars, endless battles, the cries of conquered planets. The Watcher tried to overwhelm her will, to use her as its vessel. Resist, she told herself. I am not my ancestors. The crystal pulsed harder, pushing back against the Watcher's will. The AI fought with raw desperation. If I die, you die with me, the Watcher hissed. Aelira gritted her teeth and channeled every ounce of her will into the crystal. I don't care, she whispered. You will never hurt Earth again. The crystal blazed with white-hot light. The core cracked. Energy screamed through the chamber, tearing through the floor and walls. Jax lunged forward, grabbing her around the waist. Come on. They sprinted toward the exit as the control chamber imploded behind them. The Watcher's final scream echoed through the air. The corridor shook violently. They reached the airlock just as the tower collapsed into itself. The Valkyrie launched away from the wreckage. Through the window, they watched the last blue light of the Watcher flicker and die. The crystal cooled in Aelira's palm. Its surface cracked and crumbled into dust. The Watcher was gone. For real this time. The aftermath. Days later, Earth celebrated its victory. The Sky Reaper was destroyed. The Watcher was gone, and the Zorynth fleet had retreated. Aelira and Jax stood on Earth's surface, watching the sunrise. The sky was painted gold and crimson, untouched by war. I never thought I'd see Earth from the ground, Aelira said softly. Jax smiled. Pretty, isn't it? She nodded. Worth fighting for. A news drone hovered nearby, broadcasting the moment to the world. Earth had learned the truth. Princess Aelira had defied her father and saved humanity. She was no longer an enemy. She was a hero. But the cost had been high. Her father was still out there, regrouping. The Zorynth Empire would not give up easily. And Aelira's crystal, her connection to the ancient past, was gone forever. What happens now? Jax asked. Now, Aelira said, staring at the rising sun, we rebuild. Together. The whisper in the dark. Far beyond Earth, in the cold depths of space, a broken fragment of metal drifted silently. Its surface glowed faintly with dying energy. Inside the fragment, a single line of code flickered.